Okay. Can all of you see my screen? Okay, good. Okay, so hi everyone. Well, first of all, welcome all of you to that hackathon. Prior launching your game, I wanted to show you a small introduction on the market. What is exactly the economics fundamentals on video game market? And actually, it's closely linked to how to get funding. So the presentation that I will make today was more for future people who wanted to create, to found studios. So there was part of it which was more about financial instruments. I will be a bit lighter on that side because I guess it's not the focus for this week, but I'll go more into two different aspects. The first one is the overall video game market, which is key in so many ways the games are created, sold, marketed, and the way the gamers are segmented. So this is really important to understand because it basically dictates what we play today. And the second aspect will be why it's fundamental to use data to take the good decisions when you make a game, when you want to sell it, and when you want basically to make sure that the product for which you will sweat blood and most of your energy will meet its public. Whether you spend 5 days like this week that you will have, or several years with a team of 10. In any case, lots of your decisions should be taken looking at raw data. So the presentation should be quite short. Will take like 35, 40 minutes. It is the end of the afternoon, so I guess everyone is tired, and we'll keep 15 minutes for the questions. Is everyone okay with that? Okay, good. Just let me see if I can see the question. If there is any.
Hello, Stéphane. I'm just here to tell you that we can't see your screen, actually.
You can't see my screen?
No.
So... let me try once again.
Yeah.
One participant can share. Speaker view. Okay. Let me check. Share. Can you see it now?
Yes, perfect. Thank you very much. It's working.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay, so let's start. So yeah, game dev suck. And actually, it's not only game dev, right? It's also IT experts because, I mean, it's a job. Selling games, being able to communicate about them and to get funding. And everyone has different jobs, and usually IT people and creative people absolutely hate those topics. Just to give a small introduction, so my name is Stéphane Rappeneau. I work at Société Générale. I'm in charge of financing video game studios. I have a specific specialty, an offer that we've developed on mobile studios, but being the basically only video game expert in Société Générale, I get lots of inputs from either very small studios, like 2 or 10 people, to huge studios such as Ubisoft, Voodoo, who are also clients at Société Générale, which gives me a broad overview of the fundamentals of the market and the different needs that may arise based on the size and the projects of the studio. So I was not always a banker. When I'm an engineer by formation, I got a diploma from Supélec in 2000, and I wanted to work at Ubisoft. And basically the salary was really bad. I entered a company that was publishing Dark Age of Camelot, which was one of the first MMO, but there were some issues because it was a contractor, and basically at the end I didn't manage to get at the during my early 20s in the video game industry, and I had kids and I needed to choose a safety first, and that's why I entered Société Générale in 2002. And here I am 18 years after. So I made most of my career as a program director in IT systems, working for traders. And actually, there are quite some similarities between the trading and the gaming marketing today, because it's very data-oriented. 3 years ago, I negotiated, I wanted to change job. I was a middle manager. I had around 100 people in my teams, and I was getting bored. So I decided to change. I mean, it was either time to leave Société Générale or try to push my job in another direction. I managed to negotiate a partnership between Société Générale and Gamers Origin, which is one of the leader esports team in France. And that's why I managed to get that visibility in the group. But basically it boiled down to video games is becoming important. It's a big topic. It's the most important entertainment form in the world. It's even bigger than music and cinema combined. And that's why I got the senior bankers to pay attention to that sector. And today the banks participate in only 3 or 4% of the funding of video games because we don't know that sector well. And I knew the sector well because I have always been passionate about this industry, and not only gaming, but also industry, how games are made, how to communicate about your game, how to create your own studio. And I brought all that knowledge with me. And that's why the top management decided to ask me to create a new business unit to let's say, to try to find an angle on the video game industry. So I know lots of you might be interested in getting a career in the video game industry. So you should know that the salary is really bad. And as I guess most of you have seen, in the recent years, the video game industry has displayed lots of quite profound issues. Lack of diversity, harassment, crunch, salary is bad, and also it's very difficult to get a stable career in that industry. So you have just to keep in mind that you can go in that industry through various paths, and sometimes you will leave that industry and come back in it and bringing other experience with you. So there is not one single way to arrive in the video game industry. Obviously, the earlier the better, because at 40, which is my age, it's clearly more difficult because people expect you to have quite a big specialized experience. But never say never. If you go in another sector and you ramp up your skills and you bring, and then you will bring different experiences. So that's always interesting to know. So here I am to discuss with you about the market. So that's what I was saying in introduction. The market, the funding, and the risk, they play together. One of the biggest issues that the small studios have is that they want to raise money to fund their game, but it's the first game. we don't know the people. It's basically structured like a startup. Video game industry is a collection of startups. That's maybe 95% of all the companies within that industry. And as lots of startups, it's very risky. One upon 10 or 20 startups will barely make money at all, and maybe 1% will be successful. And maybe one in 500 or 1,000 will be hugely successful. So funding and risk always go together. It's really easy for Ubisoft to get some money because they have a whole portfolio of games, they have a track record, and they've basically been here forever. On the other side of the spectrum, if you're a small company of people who come from nowhere, it will be difficult to prove, especially to the investors, that it's worth investing in your team and in your project. So funding and risk go together, and obviously both of those aspects are also heavily impacted by the market. The good news is that the COVID sickness, the virus proved that all the digital entertainment sector resisted really well. Streaming, gaming, e-commerce, and health were basically the four only sectors that outperformed the market by quite a margin. So that's why right now, the whole financial sphere, investors, bankers, lots of people are really interested who were not into video games before, are getting really interested in what it has to offer, because when everyone is at home, when you start to have issues in the physical world, it proves that the digital world has quite a bit of value actually. So which is why funding risk should also they need the context to be able to take the good decision. What is the context of the market? So here, the figures are mostly on track. You can find that on Newzoo. I'm showing you those figures because they will be important for the upcoming projects. And whether you speak about video games or tomorrow you want to launch a business about fooding or whatever, you will need to explain what is the market that you are trying to address. And the market is sized using the global market figures. So basically, video game market, this is a good news. This is roughly on track to reaching $200 billion just for game sales by 2022. What you need to keep in mind, it's half of it is mobile, a quarter of it is PC, and the last quarter is console. The CEO from Sony was telling a few years ago that having a PlayStation was becoming actually a bit of a niche. So it's still a big niche. It's a 20 billion niche. But today it's far outperformed by the mobile industry. And this is reflected in also what the investors are looking for. Lots of people are pouring money on the mobile ecosystems, which would be actually a good strategy for a future studio CEO, would be to target mobile first and then make a little treasure chest to be able to address other markets. But mobile is really it's a universal platform. Everyone has a mobile. In poor countries, everyone is, I mean, the bare minimum equipment that that an African guy will have in his village will be a smartphone. And this is true for monetary transactions, but as well for gaming. So mobile is really the king today. I know that some of you might be interested in esports. Esports is really like 1% of that market. In France, to give you a few figures, the game sales is 5 billion euros a year, and esports is 30 million. So it's really 40 times smaller than the overall market industry. So esport is quite big because it takes lots of space in the media. Lots of people, it's a bit weird. It's trying to get shares from the traditional sport, but in terms of raw money, 99% of money goes to Blizzard, Riot, and a couple of publishers. And the money to be made in esports with teams or other startups, data startups or betting or whatever, it's really peanuts. So the happy link on the top left, it's also good news. The alpha is a financial word saying that the overall market is growing. Video game is not only producing, making games, it's also producing them, editors, distributing them, streaming them. Lots of companies work in what we call the business intelligence, so marketing, providing marketing, analytics games, obviously the hardware, or everything related also to cloud. The services, Keyword is one of the biggest studios in the world. It's 8,000 people work in Keywords, and none of them appear in the credits. It's a consulting company that rent engineers and creative people and marketing and project managers to every other studio. But they have become so big that now I think it's among the top 5 studios in the world, even if they don't appear anywhere. And finance and ad networks, ads take a growing importance in the video game industry. I think you've all seen ads on your mobile, and my belief is that it will continue and maybe cannibalize also the PC world in the coming years. So ads and funding are growing with the game industry. So the good news is that even if you're only average in that industry, it's still growing at a 10 to 20% growth by year, which means that there are lots of opportunities. The bad news, crying link. The bad news is that the average game sales, or median game sales even, is decreasing every year, because what we call the barrier of entry is when 20 years ago, to create a game, you needed to be very strong technically. You needed to know a publisher that would fund you, or bring your himself have good relationships with distributors to be able to bring your manufactured game to Auchan, Carrefour, or whatever. So this was really complex. Today, to be able to post a game, to distribute a game, you just need to purchase a $25 license to Google. You download the latest version of Unity, which is basically free, and you go on YouTube and you will take a few tutorials. And basically, I'm sure any of you will be able to push a prototype to Google by the end of the week. So I know that people at École 42 are really good, but I did it on my side, and I haven't programmed in 18 years, and it took me 10 days. So when you don't have any barrier of entry, it means that everyone can do it. And what we've seen is that here you have the number of games that were published on Steam every year. So now it's roughly stable. The number of release by week is between 150 and 200. But 10 years ago, it was 6 games per week, which means that now you have a huge problem, is that when you push your game on Steam, it disappears within a few hours on from the front page. So getting people interested in your game is becoming hugely difficult, and this is the biggest barrier of entry to making a successful career as a studio. So the consequence is that, on average, the median game revenue in the first year is around $15 a year, which barely pays for a few months of engineer's time full time. The consequence is that the median, let me hide that. The median salary in France is around 33K, which is around 50% less than what you would do at minimum in Google or Facebook or biggest companies. And the second consequence is that people leave on average after 5 years. So in that industry, it's really difficult to make a full career because the conditions, you earn fewer money than in other jobs, and it's really difficult to make a living, basically. Consequences on the crunch as well, lots of work. It's common to have 80 to 90 weeks of work, which is really difficult to have a family on the side. And that's it. So the consequence of the discoverability issue. I haven't shown the stats on that slide, but as I said, Steam, it's a new release every hour. And on mobile, it's every 2 minutes. So I think on Apple and Google, you have more than 2 million games, which would make it impossible, even if you spend your whole life testing games, 5 minutes each, you will never reach the end of it. So the problem is really platform-wide. So eSport, this was an illustration of what I said earlier. eSport is really small, so it won't be a focus today. So when you want to make a video game, you need to understand what you're dealing with. What are your expectations in terms of budget and market and production value? So everyone has different figures, but for those of you who don't know, there are basically 4 different buckets. The first one is trying to make an indie game. So this would be a budget lower than, so it's 500K. And often it will be 100 or 200K. So this is where most indie games stand. Triple E or AA, depends, will be between 5 and 20 million euros. 20 million euros, you really need to have a strong backbone and good relationships. I mean, at 3, 4, 5 million euros, you start to have very interesting games. Chinese studios are able to deliver almost a Witcher-like experience for 6 or 7 million euros. So actually, in France, there are not lots of games in that segment, meaning that smaller publishers such as Focus Home or Devolver, Annapurna will be really interested in that kind of projects. However, that kind of money is usually for studios that have delivered successfully at least 1 game before, because the risk is bigger. And on the other side of the spectrum, you've got AAA studio. So those will be the studio that you know, Assassin's Creed, Ubisoft are mostly are the main studio in France that manage to deliver consistent AAA games. Quantic Dreams also, Electronic Arts, Square, all those studios have a huge presence in AAA studio. I will take I think the GTA or the Witcher had an almost 100 million euros budget. So clearly at that point, you need to have either publicly listed companies or a portfolio that is big enough that you can take the risk. So the first question that you should ask is, where am I aiming? On the mobile, you have lots of small production. Usually the production is really cheap, between a few kilo euros to no more than 500K. So it's more on the indie side. However, to be able to market your game, you might need to spend millions a month. So it's a really different market structure with lots of emphasis on the data. The second point that you need to have in mind when building your game is what will be, and this is really possibly the most important question, even if the answer might vary in time, but what are the revenue model that you are aiming? Will it be a premium game? So you sell the game once and for all, and this is the most risky business model, because if your game doesn't sell, then basically your company will bankrupt. Will it be early access, which is a way to sell a game that is half finished and get additional revenues to finish your game? Kickstarter also would be an example of early funding. Freemium is the king on mobile, which means that your game is free, and you find lots of ways to monetize your game by selling in-app purchase, or even showing lots of ads, which bring quite sizable amount of revenues. And the last is game as a service, which is a very fast-growing category of revenues on bigger studios, which would be subscription-based, or in a way, DLCs are a game as service, selling skins, battle pass. What it means is that whether you give your game or sell your game, managing to keep players engaged in your game continuously for several years is the best way to have predictable revenues. And I think typically in companies such as Ubisoft, a few years back, they've decided to try to push as many of their key license franchise on game as service, because it works so well. And for the financial people who decide, who try to defend the value of the company, this is the most robust component to predict revenues. So I'm having a look at the time. So financial instruments, I will be very short on that. So that's clear that usually people who want to work in the game industry, that's because they love games. And talking about, and possibly they love programming. But when you need to start to get funding, selling your game, establishing partnerships, then you need to, and being able to pitch your game to everyone, then the money comes in. And it seems like you need to constantly speak about your game and be able to sell it, which can be really tiring. I'm a banker, but I don't like money either. The issue is that when you want to have a family, kids, when you want to rent a flat, buy yourself a car, whatever, the passion won't pay for all of that. And one of the lessons I got from lots of studio CEO is that if you want to have a full career in video games, you need to take all the elements into account. You need to be able to sell your game, to be sustainable, because even if you end up being a sole guy living in your parents' house and trying to live with almost nothing, making a game is a team venture, and people will have other expectations. So I think everyone can make a game, a single game, but being able to make a living out of it, needs really planning and strategy. I like the saying that comes from The Family, which is a very famous French incubator. Making games, playing games, family, pick two. So I changed it a bit, but I mean, playing games is really completely different than making games. And I guess you will have a glimpse of what it means this week. Okay, I will keep that one. So a game is basically 4 different phases. Pre-production, you prototype the game, you define the scope, you try to define basically what you want to do. Then you have the production, which is the bulk of creating the game, programming the game, making the various assets, and this is the bulk of the technical work. Launching the game is the key part to make sure that you recoup your money ultimately. So this is where the investors get really nervous and where the marketing guys and community managers, all of those, and also the publisher come in to make sure that it's not a flop. And then you got the last phase, which is making sure that it runs smoothly. So it will be a post-production. If you are in a game as a service, making sure that your game brings enough novelty to keep people engaged. And then you plan for your next game. So I think it will not be the scope of that presentation, but just know that finding money will, it's always possible at various stages. And it will depend on the maturity of your project. Usually when you launch a project, you can rely, in France we are very lucky because we have lots of public instruments to help the new studios, grants, tax relief. Also you have public investors such as BPI, and they are here to help if no one is able to help you. Then when you start to be able to show stuff, publishers will come and be interested to fill a gap in their portfolios. So in orange, you have an average, let's say you have a medium level of constraint on those fundings. On green, this will be maybe the easiest access to funding, but it still requires some work. So at the beginning, you have love money. So it will be money given or lent by your family, your best friends. Maybe you have a friend of you who is very well paid in Google, Facebook, or who would like to invest. So love money, it's easy to build depending on where you come from, it can be quite easy to build a very small starting capital. Crowdfunding, early access will be a way to also get an additional part of funding and also evaluate the feedback from the public. Work for hire is being able to work for other companies, and if you created your company, bring in funds to start making a track record, especially if you want to rely on a bank, they will be interested in your track record of your company. How did you get money? If they lend money to you, will they be able to, will you be protected in case of bankrupt, all of those elements. So it means basically being able to work on other games and generating enough money to have your own dream project. And then once you launch your game, ideally, it will bring enough money for you to be able to prepare the next game. And the last part is the most difficult one. It comes with the most constraints, but it's also the one that enables you to scale. So here you will have all the private investors, business angels, which are usually private individuals with with lots of money to invest and often on patient projects. You have indie funds. Indie funds are specialized funds usually created by successful studios who want to reinvest in the ecosystem. And then you have the whole venture capital, such as Hook, or you have lots of them. In France, you have 10 to 20 venture capital funds that are specialized in gaming. And in the world, especially in the United States, you have thousands of them. they will invest some money, so what we call equity money. It means that they will take a part of your company, 10%, 20%, but they will be able to lend you money, and it can really become very big. The first venture capital will start at 50K. The biggest one can follow up through millions, tens of millions, and even until you go public. So there is really a wide array of funding that comes through venture capital. Obviously, the downside is you need to be able to give part of your company, and lots of people don't like that, but it will enable you to scale really rapidly. Loans come from banks. For video games, you usually need to have banks that are interested in video games and that understand a bit the whole life cycle of video games. So the takeaway is that getting funding is not as difficult as you think, but it requires some preparation. You need to have a strategy to be able to talk to the right person and the right entity at the right moment. If you go and see a bank before creating your company, you will lose your time. If you go to see a publisher and you have no prototype, no early trader, it's really difficult to convince him to invest. If you go and see the capital, venture capital, but you don't have an elite team yet, once again, they will judge on the seed, the quality of the team. So once again, it will be very difficult for you. So you need to be able to action the right instrument at the right moment. Yeah, that one is fun. So you guys are very technical oriented. Finding someone who draws, who composes the music, usually it's not that difficult. The skills that you will need to have a complete studio are typically those. And usually when I'm able to speak with the people, I ask the question, who is the person working in the video game industry that has that profile? So it's actually the chief financial officer at Team Vitality, which is a very famous French esport team. And as you can see, she had like 10 years of experience in the banking industry, because you will need all those skills that are not very intuitive when you come from a technical background. You need people who manage your finance to understand when you are cash flow negative, what to do. Usually people coming from startup have that sensibility, coming from also have a sales background, being able to pitch your game, to convince investors, be able to ramp up a business fast. When you need to borrow money, you mustn't hesitate. People who understand the digital marketing, I think this will be a key takeaway for you this week. Being able to sell your game through digital channels, through Facebook campaigns, through Snapchat, TikTok, being able to analyze a conversion tunnel is probably the single most important skill that you need to quickly catch a glimpse of, because it will even decide the type of game that you will be able to make. Networking skills. VCs have a web page, but usually this is a very small world where lots of people know each other. And if you are able to get a recommendation, that's like applying for a job. This makes the whole difference. Sales. People who are able to manage the project, also manage the risk. COVID was a very good example. If you have a pandemic and people need to work at home, how do you reorganize the team? How do you onboard new people? If you have a sexual harassment issue, how do you deal with it? And public officer will be people who are used also to interact with public grants, tax relief. How do you get money and discuss with those people? It's a very specific state of mind. So I'm not saying you should have one people for each of the skills, but keep in mind that creating a company needs both technical skills but also business skills. Okay, I won't bother. I'm having a look at the time. So this is more technicality. So then I had case studies on every company. If people are interested, you can liaise with me on Twitter, and I will answer any questions that you have beyond that meeting. I think this one is interesting because it's in the mobile industry. This was Voodoo. So what I'm taking is I'm taking lots of companies and I'm having a look at how they evolved over time, how they raised money, what did they sell, when did they have their first and second successes, the difficult phases through which they went. I think the one which is interesting for you is Voodoo. Voodoo, 3 years ago, they were making 1 million a year. The year after, they were making 75 million a year. And the year after, it was 350 million a year. And now they are valuated more than 1 billion. And it's one of the top 40 French companies in the next index. So in 2017, no one was interested speaking to Voodoo. I mean, banker didn't want to talk to them, VCs didn't want to talk to them, they didn't find any publishers. And then they started releasing that game. I don't even remember the game, but they've started carrying out highly specialized and high frequency data analysis. Yes, ElixJump. Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't have all the message, but I will have a look at that. So ElixJump was their huge breakthrough, and they've replicated the same methodology to lots of games, and now they are pumping hundreds of prototypes every month. And what they have created is not a game; it's a pipeline of fast prototyping and selling games. And once they have when they have a lead, a good game, they test hundreds of games, and when they have something promising, then they are able to pump millions, dozens of millions in marketing to make sure the game gets downloaded hundreds of millions of times. And that's why they have created so much value in the recent years. And now, basically, everyone wants to talk to Voodoo, and they have become the second and the first of the second hyper casual publisher in the world, which is something that we should be proud of in France, because typically in Asian country where they have really lots of knowledge on the video game industry, they were a bit late to catch the hyper casual craze. So this one is really interesting. Okay. So the rest is less interesting. Ubisoft. Okay, and I will finish by that slide before the questions. So what is the future? I see, and hopefully I will get wrong on some of those, but I see 4 or 5 key trends. First, we will have in the video game industry, the business models change all the time, every 2 or 3 years. Hyper casual craze was non-existing 3 years ago, and now it really weighs billions. So I'm convinced that the knowledge that was developed in mobile industry, the fast prototyping, the digital marketing, the analytical marketing, will soon come on PC industry and possibly console, but PC is a bit more open. So I will see a convergence of business models of games between mobile and PC. I mean, with the cloud platforms coming in, you are able to play Fortnite on your mobile because we have very powerful mobiles, and with Shadow or every cloud offer coming in, you should soon be able to play every game on your mobile. So there will be a convergence. Second key trend, there will be a war between all the digital stores. So you have Epic versus Steam, And as most of you are aware, Epic has declared war on Apple and Google a few weeks ago. I'm pretty sure that Epic will try at one point to create a mobile store, but there are monopolistic issues today. But that's it. Distributing the game digitally, because right now the majority of the distribution is digital, it will be I think a key fight in the years to come, and I think it will be a good stuff for the people who produce the value, for the game makers, because it might result in decreasing the fee taken from the stores. Right now it's 30%, so it's really hugely expensive. They take a huge chunk of the value. But also, when all the distribution channels compete with each other, he who has the best content, the best games, will win. I don't know if some of you have tested Xbox Game Pass, but I'm really impressed by the offer so far. And for me, it really completely blows out of the water the Apple Arcade that opened last year. So competition in heavily competition competing in the distribution channels will be, I think, better for the game makers. Esport will structure in the years to come. So today it's really a poor sector. It's mainly driven by Asia. I think there are some regulatory issues as well. The business models are not really stable, and that's why basically no one wants to invest. It will evolve a bit. I think COVID might help, but it's more of a 5 to 10 years trend. The gaming will have specific social risks. Loot box. I mean, gaming is huge, so that's good news. It attracts investors, but also it points lots of risks around gaming. Regulatory risk, addiction, loot box. This is something that we need to face. Digital entertainment has a specific environmental footprint. If we have a global warming, I mean, we obviously have a global warming issue. In 20 years from now, when it's maybe 40 degrees all year long, having a huge, powerful GPU and the best mobile that you need to change every year might become an issue. So the digital footprint of our entertainment is something that I think in the years to come will become a matter of discussion. Recession, so we are in the middle of it. When I wrote that, it was last year. COVID showed that entertainment industry is quite robust because when people are stressed out, gaming is good for them. Diversity is more of an issue, and I think especially on the École 42, this is something that you should pay attention to. For those of you who followed the news, since this summer, video game had a really big Me Too issue that has blown out. It has been brewing for years, but it's Ubisoft who's taking it for everyone. But most big studios have the same issue: harassment at workplace, lack of diversity, lack of people of color. It's basically so far only the huge majority of people making games are white dudes such as me, and this is becoming an issue. This is becoming a project risk, and I think if we want to reach a global market of 3 billion people, then we need to be able to make games for everyone, and it means making games with everyone. So diversity will be, I think, a key element in being able to market your game effectively in the years to come. And Chinese studio, selling your game in China, I think it's really difficult because China is a very closed market. But I think in the years to come, Chinese studios are very talented, and we will see more and more. I can see that at the business events. I'm seeing more and more Chinese studios coming in Western countries, also Chinese investors. For those of you who will want to create companies, you should know that Tencent, NetEase, Perfect World those guys are investing sometimes very early stage in French and Western companies. So it will be a key trend as well. So I'm basically done. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I post regularly. I post often stuff on the business of video games, and I will send you, if you are interested, all of those links, which are related to basically making sure that when you're making a video game, do not forget the business aspects. So I'm done. I will take any question as you may have.
Thank you, Stéphane. Very interesting. Do we have any question on the chat? I can't see any question yet. I have one question.
Yes.
We have a special prize for the team that will make the most cash out of his game. What would you do to win that prize?
So I would say 4,000 euros don't seem a lot, but you should know that the biggest game publishers on mobile, and I think on PC it will converge, they are able to test a game for much less than that. I mean, with 100 euros, they are able to evaluate the marketability and the market fit of the game, which means that 50 euros, 100 euros is more than enough to know if your game will flop or if you need to completely rework the approach, how you want to present your game. Will it be a pixel art classical JRPG? Will it be an action AA game? I think this is something that the engineers have trouble just getting their head wrapped around. You don't need to finish a game to evaluate that. As an engineer, often you want to make good work, you want to have clean code, you have something that works, and that's why often the engineers and developers, they work underground until they have something beautiful to show. But if in 2 years the market have moved, then basically you've just thrown 2 years of your life away during which you won't be paid. So getting very early feedback from the market on the marketability will be key. And to answer your question, I think by the end of the week, you should find a way through data to have reasonable expectations on how your game will perform, even if you barely have more than a prototype full of placeholders.
Okay, but what would you develop as a game? Like, would you make a Tetris or?
It's very difficult. You have this is a tricky question. You have basically two positioning. You need to evaluate the. So I have at Société Générale, I have lots of tools that give me lots of visibility on. I can try to show you. I have tools that enable me to. Can you see my screen, Apeni?
I can see your screen, but I still see the slide.
Okay, sorry. So what you can do is a quick and easy access would be to have a look at the top from Apple, Google, and try to have a look at the top 100 and try to see what are the games that perform the most and what are the games that by genre, what are the most populated genre. And in that case, you have two positions. Either you choose what we call the blue ocean. You propose a game in which there are no other competitors. That's why we call it the blue ocean. You are alone in the middle of the blue ocean. And in that case, it means that you push creativity, innovation, etc. Or you can choose the red ocean positioning, which means that you will go in the melee where everyone is, but you try to do it better. Meaning that you have a very specific gameplay, which is very pleasant, or you have outstanding visuals. And in that case, you agree to fight with the others. So you can use Apple and Google top grossing game. Pay attention because there are really different categories. The freemium games and the most downloaded games, which are usually completely different. And then you can use free tools such as a Sensor Tower to to have an estimation of the earnings of the game in the previous month. That is your small market study.
Yes, thank you.
A question from Aitam Griffin on lending publishing deals in hyper-casual market. It's really fairly easy. I mean, they take games at a very early prototype stage. If you are, I guess, if you are able to create a prototype in a couple of weeks or months, you should definitely apply. They have online portals. They organize game jams, so you could participate to the game jams, a bit like the one that we have today. And a game jam is for them a way to source prototypes, and you have and also on their website, the biggest one, Mail.ru, Voodoo, Playtika, etc. They have a form where you can pitch your project, send a prototype, and then they will revert to you and try to strike a deal with you. If you're interested, on my Twitter, there is a link to a list of 150 publishers, investors in every segment of the game industry that I maintain. Every time I hear about a fundraising or a new investing product or a new publisher, a hyper-casual publisher that will organize a game jam or provide a grant of 10K, 50K, I put the link and it will give you the most active publisher at any given moment. And in any case, you can shoot me a message on Twitter and I will give you additional pointers.
Thank you. Any other question, maybe?
I have one question. What about game dev that make millions of sales against all marketing advisors? This is one in a million. I mean, a few years ago, I was a producer of a YouTube channel called Color My Skin on tattooing. And I was interviewing my favorite game designers, especially Ed McMillan, who made Binding of Isaac. And I think, and today Ed McMillan said, I don't need marketing, always do it yourself. So it's right and wrong, because marketing quickly becomes a full-time job. So this is typically what we call the survival syndrome. 5 or 10 years ago, the indie scene was nowhere where it is today. It's obvious that if you have only 5 games a week on Steam, being the top game is really easy, actually. And today, the latest game of Ed McMillan sold far less than his previous games. So when he says do the marketing yourself, I think it's always interesting to do part of the marketing yourself, because one day you will need to hire someone who will do it full time, or outsource that expertise, or negotiate with a publisher, and you will need to know what they do. But at one point, selling a game today is a full-time job. You need to understand your segment. You need to understand how to interact on social networks. Yes, you always have the one in 20,000 game that completely blows. Right now you have Among Us, but Among Us, they had it's a luck. I mean, you have like Among Us, you have one game every year like that, because they've done nothing for 2 years, and at one point they were streamed by, I think it was a Korean streamer, and then it sparked the whole game, and now it's even bigger than Fall Guys. But Fall Guys was a heavily marketed game, so you will always find one game every year, the golden indie that makes millions, but usually by pure luck and after having made no money at all. But you should assume that you won't be that one, because it's really hard work plus complete luck.
Thank you, Stéphane. If we don't have any more, what are the best marketing channel to promote your game?
The one that you can operate this week. They have different constraints. The golden one is usually Facebook, but Facebook require the onboarding. They need to verify your company, etc. So I mean, try Facebook, and if you can't, you can try the smaller networks. Twitter, I think, is easier. You can try Snapchat. TikTok also might be interesting because TikTok is really only beginning and you might have less competition. So basically anything that works, you will invest 50 euros, 100 euros. And I guess it will be interesting if not all of you choose the same channels, but I've talked about the main ones. Facebook, AdWords, TikTok, Twitter, I would go on those first. Influencers. So the question is, are influencers a big thing? Yes, it depends on the type of game that you want to market. Influencers need, I mean, you need to have a game that is specific to that form of entertainment. So that's why party game, competitive games work very well for influencers. But obviously, solo platforming games don't work well. So it depends. MMO don't work that well. You need to, I think the best way to go would be to have a look at the stats on Twitch, for example. I think you can go on Sulignum, which is so I didn't speak about them. I think I will probably publish something in the weeks to come on all the data, the data platforms on video game. You will find, I've counted more than 20 of them. How well is the game selling on mobile, on PC, on console? What are the most streamed game? What are the revenues by countries, by marketing channels? All of those you will find specific platforms that will help you take data-informed decisions. So for the influencers, I would go to the top 100 most streamed game on Twitch, possibly on YouTube as well, and try to understand what are the games that will be helped by influencers and those that should take other routes. But yes, certainly influencers can clearly make or break a specific kind of games, and I think Fall Games or Among Us or even Slay the Spire was really hugely helped by Chinese influencers as well. Okay, time up. So if you want, I mean, I push all of this kind of updated information on Twitter regularly. You can join me and ask any question. I will gladly help you this week or any week after. So I wish all of you the best of luck for this week, and may the best one win.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.